everybody. We are back. I'm Hannah Chalker alongside host of Roll Tide Daily on SEC Country, Mike Johnson, also former Alabama All-American, and host of the Mississippi State podcast, More Cowbell, Brandon Walker. It's so good to be back here with you guys.
It is great. We were together for a full week 2 weeks ago, and Mike, I hope you've recovered enough to go to battle once more.
I just got the comment section to stop complaining about you from 2 weeks ago.
Well, they're going to do it again.
And now we're recycling the whole thing, and it's going to continue.
And oh boy, do we have drama, and it starts with topic number one. An ESPN radio host out of Nashville, Braden Gall, tweeted his SEC coach rankings. Okay, here we see them 1 through 14. For the podcast listeners, I'll go ahead and quickly read through this. These are in order of his rankings. So Saban, Mullen, Gus, Smart, Jimbo, Muschamp, Stoops, Morris, Moorhead, Odom, Mason, Ed Orgeron, Pruitt, and Matt Luke rounds out the list at 14. You guys, I know before the show, are already going at it. We individually got both of your lists. Mike, let's start with you. If we can see Mike's list. So
I already let down my guy Scott Hunt in the comments section. He said Chad Morris better be up on there. No.
Obviously, you do not agree with Braden Gall. Take us through your list and what are your hot names here?
Well, listen, Nick Saban at 1. I think that's a slam dunk for everybody. I don't know how you're going to question that. Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher was a little bit tougher for me. Kirby Smart, obviously, I'm looking at last year. I'm looking at the 2017 season when I'm making that 2 and 3 combination. If both of those seasons last year hadn't been exactly what they were, then you might flip-flop Jimbo and Kirby Smart. Gus Malzahn fits squarely into 4 to me. Dan Mullen, Will Muschamp, all those 4, 5, 6 guys are kind of in a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of a tie thing going on. Mark Stoops for me, and I know that people are going to have problems with Mark Stoops at 7. The bottom line is he's gotten better every year since he's been at Kentucky. He's gone to bowl games the last couple of years after starting out with a 2-10 record in his first year in 2013. Jeremy Pruitt being at Tennessee for me, and Ed Orgeron being at LSU kind of bumps them up the list. Ed Orgeron, for everything you're going to say, still double-digit wins last year in his first full season as LSU head coach. Then I get Matt Luke at 10. Derek Mason still leaves a lot to be desired to me. Chad Morris, listen, it is what it is at this point until he proves something to me. Joe Moorhead's the same kind of way. And I've got Barry Odom all the way down at 14 on my list right now. I think that Barry Odom gets fired before the end of the year. I know a lot of people talking to the winning streak last year. The bottom line is you had the winning streak, you had a good offense, you went out and hired Derek Dooley. I think this is going to be a lost season for Missouri in a lot of different ways.
Brandon Walker chomping at the bit to say something? Or
is it the Moorhead thing? Is it the Moorhead thing?
There's a lot going on here, Mike. There's a lot going on. So we're going to just dissect his list before we get into my list. Is that what we're going to do? You say Mark Stoops at Kentucky is the 7th best coach in the SEC?
I do.
You think he's in the middle of the pack in the SEC?
He's heading into his 6th year as an SEC head coach. You cannot deny the fact that he's been long tenured at Kentucky and he's done good things.
He hasn't gotten better every year. They were terrible last year. They're not a good football team. They're going to be awful
this year. They went into bowl season 7-5.
They're going to be a terrible football team. They're going to be one of the worst 5 teams in the SEC this year.
Should have beat Florida last year. There's a bunch of different ways to look at it.
Should have beat Florida. I guess if they have a better coach, maybe they do beat Florida. I don't know the answer to that question. Can we get to my list now? Can we class this joint up a little bit, please? We're all fired in a week anyway, so it doesn't matter. Number 1, Nick Saban is number 1. There's no doubt about that. If this were a college football ranking, if this were a football coaches in America ranking, Nick Saban is either number 1 at the very top. I got Dan Mullen number 2. I've seen what Dan Mullen has done for the last 9 years. People are going to call me a homer for that. Well, he's not in Starkville
Listen,
anymore.
You've got 3 guys You've got 3 guys that have been to a national title game, and one of them that's won a national title game, ranked behind Dan Mullen on your list.
Do you guys remember when Mike was going through his list and I spoke during it? Do you remember that? No, it didn't happen, did it? Number 1, I got Nick Saban. Number 2, I got Dan Mullen. I think Dan Mullen is a better coach than Gus Malzahn, Jimbo Fisher, and Kirby Smart. Yes, Jimbo Fisher won a national title. That's great. He's not at Florida.
You have been talking crap about Dan Mullen on your More Cowbell podcast for the past 6 months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm still mad at Dan Mullen. I'm still all of my feelings over Dan Mullen. I think he's a very good coach, and I think Florida is going to be a player in the SECs come the next couple of years because of Dan Mullen. Now, Gus Malzahn, I like him better than Fisher. I like them both better than Smart. I talked to you about Smart. I talked to guys around here about Smart. I'm not sold on his coaching ability, one of the best recruiters in the country, building a program. I think they should have won a national title last year, and coaching is what cost them a national championship in those 2 playoff games. That's what I think. I've got Muschamp. I've got the same 6 Braden Gall has. I've got 1 through 6 just like he's got it. We got the same 6 just in a different order in the top 6. Now at 7 is where it falls off the cliff. I put
because you have 3 that
It's
are
such a
tied.
cop-out.
No, it's not a cop-out.
Not a cop-out.
Here's what I think. I think there are 6 proven good coaches in the conference. I think there are 5 bad proven coaches in the conference. And I think the 3 new coaches go right in the middle. And you can't tell me Joe Moorhead, Morris, or Pruitt are worse than Ed Orgeron, who has proven to be an idiot. Why did I say Ed Oregon? Did I write Ed Oregon? Did I write Ed Oregon? Apparently Ed Oregon is here, all right? So he has ducked all the way to the bottom of the list. You can't tell me any of those 3 new coaches are worse than Matt Luke, who just got the job because he beat Dan Mullen on his farewell night. You can't tell me that Mark Stoops is better than any of those new coaches. I've got the new coaches grouped below the good ones, above the bad ones. That's how I've got it.
It's such a cop-out, though.
It's not a cop-out.
I mean, you're basically saying, please don't yell at me. All these guys are tied
It's also a cop-out for you to put Moorhead at 13 just because you have never seen him coach a game. Listen,
nobody's seen him coach a game.
I've seen him be the offensive coordinator.
You ask questions about Kirby Smart and saying he cost the college football playoff, and you got Joe Moorhead on up the list that high. He hasn't coached a game.
You've never seen Jeremy Pruitt coach a game?
I mean, I haven't, but it's about weighing things out. It's weighing things out. It's like I said, Orgeron and Jeremy Pruitt up there higher for me in terms of what Moorhead can do at Mississippi State. I'm not sold. Jeremy Pruitt has seen it firsthand.
You're sold on Pruitt. You're sold on Morris, whose best season.
I'm not sold on Pruitt at all. We're not at Jeremy Pruitt at number 9. That doesn't mean I'm sold on him.
You think Mark Stoops is a better coach than Jeremy Pruitt, Chad Morris, and Joe Moorhead?
I'm with Brandon on this.
Mark Stoops wouldn't be hired at any of these programs today if he came open.
Mark Stoops, his feet are on stable ground. He's been at Kentucky 5 years, going on 6 years, and he's gotten better or stayed the same every single year he's been there.
There's
something to be said about that. It's hard to do at Kentucky.
Put the list back up.
It's hard to do at Kentucky.
Time out. Put the list back up. All right, you're telling me, look below him. All right, if LSU comes open tomorrow, are they reaching up and grabbing Mark Stoops?
No way.
If Tennessee, if Ole Miss, if any of those coaches, if any of those teams come open tomorrow, none of them are hiring Mark Stoops.
That might be true. That might be true, but that's not what this is. This is an SEC coaches ranking in terms of what they've done at their schools and where they stand right now. I mean, listen, Chad Morris might end up being the greatest coach in the history of the world. He has not coached a game at Arkansas yet.
Let me go one more. And I don't want to be the ride to the rescue of this team. I don't really like this team. I don't care about this team. But the coaches you don't like and you haven't seen coach, you got Moorhead, you got Pruitt, you got Morris, and you put everybody ahead of Barry Odom. Barry Odom, who finished the season pretty strong last year. You think Ed Orgeron and Matt Luke are better coaches than Barry Odom?
Finished the season strong against who? Who did they beat last year down the stretch in that 6-game winning
streak? The same coaches you've got ahead of him.
Listen, I told BA on the show at this time last year that Butch Jones would not make it in November. I feel the same way about Barry Odom. He's not making it. He's not making it through the year. If I think the guy's going to get fired, he's got to be last on my list.
His quarterback saved him. I cannot believe I'm going to say that I agree with you, though. I do not think Mark Stoops is the 7th best.
I don't see how you rank him any lower in terms of, and that's fine. Let's do it a toss-up. Hey, let's tie everybody for 7th that hasn't coached a game yet. That's a cop-out.
That's not a cop-out.
But Mark Stoops has proven that he can win games in the SEC at a higher rate than most Kentucky coaches that have ever done.
Let's talk more about your love affair with Jimbo Fisher. You love Jimbo Fisher. You've said all along Texas A&M is going to be good this year, and you like Jimbo Fisher up there at 3, ahead of guys like Malzahn, I believe. He's behind Saban and Smart. You got him ahead of the other guys. You got him ahead of Malzahn and everybody. I personally don't like Jimbo Fisher that much. I think he had a great player and a great run at Florida State, but it fell apart quickly, and he did nothing to keep it from falling apart. I'm not sold on Jimbo Fisher as high as you've got him.
Listen, Jimbo Fisher, if it wouldn't have been for last year, he would have been at number 2. He's won a national championship. He did incredible things at Florida State. He's got all the background he needs at Texas A&M to do whatever he wants to. So I agree with you. Listen, if he wouldn't have fallen apart last year, I would have had him ahead of Kirby Smart just because he's got the ring in his pocket. Just based on the 2017 season, though, I flip-flopped those guys, and Kirby Smart's my number 2 guy. You got to take everything into account. You've got to take recruiting into account. You got to take into account what school these guys are at. You got to take into account what their resources are. That's what I've mixed into my ranking.
I think if Kirby Smart, I'm going to go to Kirby Smart real quick. They're filleting me on the comment section because I have Kirby Smart so low. I think if Kirby Smart were as good of a coach as Georgia fans and everybody else thinks he is, then Georgia would be the defending national champion. That's what I think. I think the coaching of Georgia kept Oklahoma in a game. Oklahoma had no business being in a game. And I think the coaching of Georgia not giving it to the right running back, continuing to give it to the running back who's getting stuffed at the line, the coaching allowed Alabama to win the national title. I thought Georgia was the better team in that game, and Georgia's coaching held them back.
That's fine. You can say that the coaching cost them the game. The fact is his coaching got them to the national title game. His coaching on defense beat the Heisman Trophy winner out in Pasadena. So if we're gonna knock him for what he was on the biggest stage in college football, we got to give him credit for everything that came before. He's an SEC champion.
I'm not sure the defense beat. I mean, they gave up 48 points. Now listen, The coaching, he's a very good coach. I got him in the top 5. He's a very good coach. He is building something. But I believe if they were better, if they coached better in the semifinal, and they coached better in the national title game, Georgia should have been the national champs in 2017. That's what I believe.
That's fair, but I'm just telling you, you got to give them credit for the games that came before the national championship game too. If we're going to say that Joe Moorhead is this and he's never even coached a game in the SEC. I didn't
bring up Joe Moorhead. You did.
But I'm saying you're giving guys credit that have never coached a game in the SEC, putting them in the middle of the pack, tying them for 7th, saying, like I said, that's a little bit of a cop-out to me.
It's not a cop-out. But I'm telling you right now, there are some good coaches. There are some bad coaches. Let's put the new ones in the middle. Ed Orgeron, we know he's terrible. Matt Luke, we know he's terrible. We've seen them coach. We don't know about the new guys.
Matt Luke's not terrible. He's not as bad as Barry Odom. If you're going to make the argument,
Ole Miss fans don't even like Matt Luke. Ole Miss fans don't even like Matt Luke, and Ole Miss fans like everybody. They love being lied to. They don't even like Matt Luke.
No comment. Okay, Jared Seegers in the comment section says, "Dude, Mullen at number 2 doesn't make sense. He has a losing record against ranked teams." This is really what's getting people fired up in the comment section: is you having Mullen at number 2,
That's right,
and Moorhead tied for 7. I thought you thought Moorhead was the savior of the program.
I don't think he's a savior. I don't think the program needs saving. I think Mullen has left a very good program. I've talked about that. 18 starters. I think State's a 9-win team this year at least. I don't think Mississippi State needed a savior, but I do like he was the savior of Penn State football. James Franklin was on the verge of getting run out of there. They didn't have any offense. All of a sudden, Moorhead comes. They've got a great offense, and they almost make the playoffs twice. So Moorhead did help save Penn State football over the last couple of years, and I think he's going to continue what Mullen started building. What Mullen started building was he took over a program that was nothing, that was trash, that was awful. They had gone to 1 bowl in 10 years and built an 8-year bowl streak. He built the #1 team in the country in 2014. He attracted Dak Prescott. If he can take that coaching ability to Florida, much better resources, an easier division, I think Mullen is going to build something at Florida that's going to be even better if he can recruit, and I don't know that he can. It's going to be even better than what Kirby Smart's building.
Listen, I think Dan Mullen's a good coach. I think it was the right hire at Florida. I think it was a home run hire for them. I think they're on the verge of being very good this year. But let's take recruiting into account, and let's take big game coaching into account. What big game did Dan Mullen ever win in his coaching career as a head coach?
He beat number 2 Auburn 38-23 in 2014. He beat number 6 Texas A&M. He beat them 48-20.
That's what you're hanging your hat on?
You asked me a big game. I just told you a matchup between number 3 and number 2. Are you gonna discount that? You asked me a big game.
I am discounting that. If that's the biggest game we're talking about. We're not talking about SEC championships. We're not talking about games to seal them up to go to Atlanta. We're not talking about any big bowl games. We're not talking about New Year's Day games. We're talking about mid-season Mississippi State against Auburn from 4 years ago. That's the big game. That's what we're hanging our hat on. I have a hard time putting it. I have a hard time. If that's what you're saying is going to be your number 2 coach in the SEC, your number 2 coach in the SEC over Gus Malzahn and Jimbo Fisher and Kirby Smart, who have all been in national title games. That's mind-boggling.
Let's put the original list back up there.
Oh, yay.
From Braden Gall. He is an ESPN radio host out of Nashville. This is where this topic even comes from. So this is his list right here, and obviously you guys completely disagree. Let's run through them really quick. Mike's list for a second.
Yeah. No, and listen, and I have the same problem with Braden Gall putting it, Dan Mullen up there at number 2 as I do with Braden. I don't see it. I mean, this guy, and listen, there's people putting this in the comment section where I see it. He's like 1 in 30 in these top 10.
I don't want to do this because I am a Mississippi State fan. I am a homer. Do you believe that coaching at Mississippi State is the same as coaching at Florida? Do you believe it's the same as coaching at Georgia?
No.
No, of course you don't. So what he has accomplished at Mississippi State is incredible. He's done a great job. He has built a program. He's built a program that's got in the top 5 in wins in the last 5 years at Mississippi State. You don't think he's going to go to Florida and outcoach these clowns in the East? He's going to.
That's why I have him as high as I do. But I can't put him over national championship winning coaches or coaches that have won the SEC. They won the SEC.
He hasn't won a national title.
And he won the Rose Bowl last year. Gus Malzahn's won the SEC. They've been in national title games. Jimbo Fisher has a ring.
Kirby Smart won the Rose Bowl despite himself. I'm telling you that right now.
You're going to get people riled up.
That team was much more loaded than Oklahoma. They were much better. Oklahoma great offensively, Georgia great offensively, Georgia good defensively, Oklahoma hot garbage defensively, and they allowed Oklahoma to stay in it. And then Georgia played better in the first 3 quarters against Alabama. Georgia was in control. Georgia should have won that title game, and the coaching froze up.
Because Saban outcoached him in the second half.
That's exactly right.
But Saban's number 1.
Saban's number 1.
Saban's number 1.
Saban is number 1.
Connor, one of our producers, wants to test your knowledge.
I don't care what Connor wants.
He asks, what's Mullen's record versus Saban?
Oh, it's Owen. It's over. It's over. That's very easy. It is 0 for 9.
Okay.
It's
okay.
It's 0 and 9.
There is that. All right, let's move on. Whew. Let's move on to another list that we probably will not agree with here on SEC Country. SEI.com reveals the top 100 college football players for 2018, and they put out 11 through 30 on the list. Alabama has 3 players, but we will start with LSU. The highest one on this list, number 11, Greedy Williams, cornerback for the Tigers. Number 12, Jonah Williams, offensive lineman for Alabama. 18, Deebo Samuel, wide receiver for South Carolina. 19, Mack Wilson, linebacker for Alabama. 21, A.J. Brown, wide receiver for Ole Miss, and 28, Raekwon Davis, defensive lineman for Alabama. Guys, this list of 11 through 30 has quarterbacks that are already causing Heisman buzz, running backs that are looking to prove themselves. But what do you think about these players there on 11 through 30?
Well, I think the biggest tragedy for me is that the top 10's already come out from SI, and there's no SEC players in it. There's no SEC.
Yeah.
That's weird.
It's extremely. It makes me think twice about what we're looking at here in terms of 11 through 50 or whatever it is. I mean, Greedy Williams, for my money, is a top 10 player in the country. Jonah Williams, the left tackle for Alabama, has already come out as possibly being the number 4 pick in next year's draft. So, listen, I love it when you're going to name the top 50 players from from college football, and you have this many SEC guys in it. Deebo Samuel, deserves to be where he's at. Mack Wilson deserves to be where he's at. But I find it a head scratcher that you do see a couple of Clemson defensive linemen who are very good. You see some good players in the top 10, there's no doubt. But it's a head scratcher for me that we can look at that list and say, well, you know what? There's not really top 10 players from the SEC. It's the best conference in the country, though. That's what's tough for me to look at.
All right, I've got 2 things. So one involves a Mississippi State player. You're going to be shocked about that. Raekwon Davis probably deserves to be higher. An Alabama player deserves to be higher. But Jeffrey Simmons is better than Raekwon Davis, and Jeffrey Simmons is nowhere near this list. Jeffrey Simmons deserves to be in the top 10, and I think Raekwon Davis deserves to be at the back end of the top 10. Now, Deebo Samuel might be very good. He got hurt last year. He's off to a fantastic start. He's not a better wide receiver than A.J. Brown. That's just silly. A.J. Brown going to be the best wide receiver in the country this year. I don't like it. He's from Starkville. He went to Ole Miss, but A.J. Brown should be a top 10, 15 player. He is not a worse wide receiver than Deebo Samuel. Overall, I think it's a fair, decent little list. It's summertime, it's list season, so we argue about pointless things, but I would say Jeffrey Simmons from Mississippi State should be way up there, and A.J. Brown should be higher.
And I'm not sure where Jeffrey Simmons ended up landing on this list. I know he's going to be a good player. I agree with you. And you have to project a little bit when you're talking about projecting towards the season, what the preseason is. I think where I'll hit back on you is that, yes, I think A.J. Brown's a better wide receiver than Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel does way more for that football team than A.J. Brown does for Ole Miss.
You think he does?
Deebo Samuel is an all-purpose guy. I mean, when we're talking about the yardage that he compiled last year, if he comes back and has anything near the, 2.5 games he had last year for South Carolina, they're not even in the same ballpark.
Yeah, but again, you're judging off 2.5 games. I mean, you think you project that all the way to the end of the season, but he hadn't got to the meat of the SEC schedule. We don't know how good he would have been against all these really good defenses that he faced later on in the season. I just think A.J. Brown is one of those rare receivers that comes around every now and then. I think he's a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Again, I don't like it any more than anybody else, but I would pick A.J. Brown over Deebo Samuel. They're both very good. They're the top 2 wide receivers in the conference, not even close. I don't think anybody's been close to them.
Let me hit you with this question just because you got on this topic, and me and Brandon went round about this the other day, and honestly, he made me start to believe what he was talking about. He said there's nobody on Florida's roster that's even in the ballpark, the area code, the zip code with Deebo Samuel. He said that Deebo Samuel is the best player on either one of those football teams, and he don't even think it's close. And you brought my attention up to it with A.J. Brown because of the Van Jefferson transfer.
Well, first of all, C.C. Jefferson's a good college football player. There are other good college football players on that defense. I would say Van Jefferson, you can't tell me he's not in the ballpark with Deebo Samuel. Van Jefferson's going to be a good transfer for Florida, going to be a good player. I think Florida's talent is a heck of a lot better than Brandon Adams wants it to be. I know they got killed. I know they got killed by Georgia last year. They had a lot going on. They had one of the worst coaches in the country. Jim McElwain was a clown show. Now they're going to get more competent coaching. I think Florida's a lot better team than people are giving them credit for. They had a disaster last year. It was awful. But I don't think BA's assessment of Florida is on target.
No, I don't either. And I think Florida, and I've said this BA a ton, I think Florida's going to be a lot better than people realize. And I agree with you. Last year was a mess down at Florida.
A mess.
Listen, Barry Odom was just number 14 on my list. But he took it to the Florida Gators last year in that game. And that's the only one to me that was of any significance in that
Yeah, and if McElwain were still here, I feel like, I mean, he would be at the bottom of my list. I think McElwain was just an awful coach. And, you know, last year's list totally different because you got rid of 14 Butch Jones, you got rid of 13 Jim McElwain, and, you know, everybody gets demoted and promoted from there. But McElwain was a real problem. So anything somebody says about Florida's roster last year, I just think we didn't get a clear picture of Florida's roster last year. And plus, not only McElwain, but also that crap off the field with the credit cards and this guy getting suspended and that guy getting suspended. Now that's going to get cleaned up a little bit. We'll get a more clear picture of what Florida is.
No, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you.
Bowen Molinari says BA was right, guys. But my question to you, Mike, is we've talked about SEC quarterbacks so much. SEC has some of the top quarterbacks in the nation. We have gone back and forth with Tua and Jake Fromm. Why isn't an SEC quarterback on this list?
It's tough, and it was loaded in in 100 through 51. It was absolutely loaded. I mean, every other guy, it was I think Tua was 84, Jared Stidham was 83. We can go on that one all day you want to. That Jared Stidham continues to get slept on. I mean, listen, nobody wants to root for Auburn. Worse than I don't want to. Jared Stidham at 83, and I think Fromm was at 65, and Ta'amu was at 77, and Nick Fitzgerald was somewhere in the 60s as well. It's ridiculous to me. I mean, it's ridiculous to me the lack of respect that Jared Stidham gets as a passer in the SEC. One of these guys, in my opinion, has to move up. Now, I don't think Jordan Ta'amu gets enough credit on a national landscape. I was happy to see him on that list, but I guarantee you, by the end of this season, when you look at the postseason Sports Illustrated Top 100, a lot of those guys are going to move into that top 50.
I think the SEC's quarterback picture gets muddied by the fact that possibly the best one only played a half of football. I think it's hard for you to put all these SEC quarterbacks all the way at the top if you believe in your heart of hearts that the guy that played a half of football might be better than them. So, and you can't put a guy that played a half of football in the top 10 in the country. You just can't do it. But that's where we are. And it also gets muddied by the fact that Jake Fromm is high up on these lists, and I don't think Jake Fromm is a top 5 quarterback in the SEC this year.
He was 65.
Yeah, he was 65.
The head scratcher.
Drew Lock, I think, is underrated in this country. I think Jared Stidham is very underrated. 83 at Jared Stidham. I think Jared Stidham's a top 30 player in this country. I really do. When you look at Auburn, their defense is going to be loaded, but they're going to win football games because of Jared Stidham on that offense. That's why they're going to win. I think Jared Stidham's underrated. But I think, again, the Tua thing really kind of messes up the entire picture of quarterbacks in the SEC.
No, I tend to agree. And you know who else landed on that list that was a head scratch for me? And I think it was at 80. I don't have it in front of me. Shea Patterson lands at 80 on the list in terms of quarterback or top 100 players.
Yeah.
That's ahead of Tua. That's ahead of Jared Stidham. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion.
It's one of the dumber things I've seen. Now, Shea Patterson, listen, Shea Patterson got done as a service when somebody gave him 5 stars way back in the day. He is not in the category of these other quarterbacks.
No, but let me ask you this, though.
Do we all agree on something?
Jordan Ta'amu ranked ahead of Shea Patterson. Are you okay with that right now?
I mean, neither are very good, so yeah, that's fine. Whatever.
I think Ole Miss fans, that's
like a 68 Pinto over a 67 Impala. I mean, who cares? They're both crap by now anyway.
Yeah. Well, something we just can't argue with is that Alabama did have 3 of the top players on SI.com's 1 through 30 list for the top college football players of 2018. And that leads us to topic number 3. Nick Saban continues to win championships, continues to bring these top-level talents to the field, but everyone constantly is all over Nick Saban about his age, guys. He's 66 years old. He will be 67 this upcoming season during the Tide's bye week in October. And other coaches around the league use that as a recruiting tool. They say, don't go to Alabama. Nick Saban's going to leave. Nick Saban's going to leave. He's getting older. He's getting older. I'm not sure how old Spurrier was when he finally retired in his 70s. 71 or 72. But I don't think Nick Saban is going anywhere. And I think this actually fuels Nick Saban to stay longer. What do you think, Mike?
No, I definitely think so, too. And the bottom line is this. The reason this comes up now, in my opinion, you might agree with me, you might not. But Kirby Smart and Gus Malzahn after the extension, and Jimbo Fisher right now with the money he just got, these guys they're on stable footing. You know what I mean? I think it's been a while since you've seen coaches from other schools that have been on stable footing that can actually recruit to the level of Nick Saban. So I think them being on stable footing and looking at players that they're recruiting and saying, hey, listen, when you're a senior, he's going to be 71, 72. I think that's the reason we see this crop up more. Now, if Kirby Smart wasn't in the position he was in, if you go back to Mark Richt, if you go back to Les Miles, if you go back to Gus Malzahn before last year, Nick Saban can fire back and say, listen, those guys might not be there by the time you leave either. That's why I think we see it crop up more. But the bottom line is this: Nick Saban's the #1 recruiting class by a mile right now. I think he's going to continue down that road, and he's changed the way he does things.
I think this is much ado about nothing. I guess what a lot of this is, but I continue to get paid anyway. But I really think this is much ado about nothing when you talk about Nick Saban getting old, Nick Saban not being, whatever, he's not going to be there for very long. Listen, Nick Saban could probably go into a coma tomorrow and they wheel him out on the sidelines, and the unanimated corpse of Nick Saban, or just him being unconscious on the sidelines, is probably still the best coach in the conference. That's how far and away better he is than Gus Malzahn or Kirby Smart or whoever you want to run him. Dan Mullen. Nick Saban is 2 and 3 times better than any coach in this conference. So anytime they say, oh, you might not play for Nick Saban very long, any minute you can get with Nick Saban to be your head coach, any minute you can get being under the tutelage of that guy getting ready for the NFL is something you probably should take advantage of. And I hate saying that because Mississippi loses a lot of kids to Nick Saban, but the bottom line is Nick Saban, you can negative recruit against him, you just make yourself look stupid.
Yeah, and it's and I don't think it's a strong too. And listen, we've seen Kirby Smart come out. He answered the question down at SEC spring meetings as, hey, listen, you can't negatively recruit about him against his age. I think the guy can coach until he's 80 years old. So, I mean, it's going to continue to happen. And the whispers are going to continue to be out there. And they come from recruits. They don't come from other coaches. They don't come from other fan bases. The whispers come from recruits. And the recruits are saying, hey, listen, I hear this, I hear that. And they continuously ask Saban. All Saban can do and answer it, and I think Chris Walsh covers that in his piece, is say, hey, listen, I'm on stable footing. I still have a clear mind. I still do the details right, and we're still the reigning national champions.
I don't really think – I mean, do you ever think about Nick Saban's age?
No.
Do you ever think about any coach's age?
No.
Not really, right? I mean, if you're a player and you're deciding where to sign or where to play or how to do this, aren't you just worried about who can get me to the NFL the quickest? Who can teach me football the best? Because I don't care if he's 60, 70, 80, or 90. It's going to be a long time before anybody offers what Nick Saban offers to recruits.
And I agree with you. And I think the details there and his ability to bring in coaches that recruit at a high level and his ability to evolve. Listen, you guys know that watch SEC Country Live. I can talk in circles about Nick Saban and everything that he's done for my life and everything he did for my playing career and being able to wear rings and all that. But I agree with you. I think the trajectory he's on. Everybody looked at last year and wondered if there was a chink in the armor. He finishes at 7th or 6th in terms of recruiting rankings. He's right back to #1 right now, and I think that's a scary thing.
And he continues to put out head coaches all over the country, and one of those being Lane Kiffin, the head coach down there at FAU. And this should be interesting to Vols fans. So he went on ESPN's Marty Smith's America, the podcast recently, and said something pretty interesting to him that I just had no idea. So he said, it's crazy. They were literally talking about it like from the bus all the way in to wear a bulletproof vest. I'm like, come on guys, this is football. They said, no, really. They had security with me the entire way, even walking on the field and stuff like that. I'm just like, I'm not wearing a vest, guys, all right? That's a little bit over the top. That's what Lane Kiffin told Marty Smith on his podcast. Now, this comes from back in 2016 when Lane Kiffin left Tennessee, and then he was the offensive coordinator with Alabama, stepping back into Neyland Stadium for the first time since being the head coach. Obviously, I know there's going to be some bad blood with Tennessee fans. I'm sure there still is. But this seems really extreme that he comes out and says security asked him to wear a bulletproof vest. You've got to be kidding me.
Do you believe that, Mike?
It's a little bit far-fetched. Now, listen, I've seen passionate fan bases.
Do you believe that, Mike?
But I have a hard time. It's hard. It's hard for me. I'll say that.
Do you believe that, Mike?
I want to believe it.
I
want to believe it. I do. I want to put it in that category where I say, you know what? Boy, that's how crazy the SEC is. They were worried about a bulletproof vest on this guy going into Neyland Stadium.
It makes a great story.
It makes a great
story. It makes a great podcast. I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe a word of it.
Let me ask you this. What is the upside of Lane Kiffin lying about that?
Lane Kiffin being Lane Kiffin and stealing headlines and saying, oh, Lane Kiffin said this in SEC country. Andrew Ashford over here writes everything Lane Kiffin's ever done, shows up and says, oh, you won't believe what Lane Kiffin said. And you type it up, and that's the Lane Kiffin business these days. So he's just pumping more into his business.
But what if it was true? Okay, I believe it's true. What if it was true? That's insane.
Then the security guys were being a little silly.
Ridiculous. That's what I'm betting my money on.
Yeah.
I'm betting my money on the fact security guys were going over the top as opposed to Lane Kiffin lying about it.
Were they like having a little fun with him, you think, or were they just?
He said that they said no, seriously.
Yeah.
You need to be aware of this situation. But this highlights to me the fact that It's crazy to me, too, the polarizing you have with Tennessee fans and Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 50% absolutely hate this guy's guts, wish that he would go away forever and never come back to Knoxville. And then we heard so many fans last November when all this stuff was going on saying, hey, listen, Lane Kiffin left for his dream job. He was recruiting at a high level. He was doing some good things in Knoxville, and we'd welcome him back. It just there's no middle ground on that.
Two things. First of all, I think it's died down a little bit from Tennessee fans and Lane Kiffin because Tennessee fans were mad at Lane Kiffin for leaving. They were mad for the way he acted and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they then hired Derek Dooley and Butch Jones. I think right now Tennessee fans will give anything for the salad days of Lane Kiffin. They have known worse coaches. They dove from the dumpster fire of Lane Kiffin into more dumpsters, deeper dumpsters with Butch Jones and other guys. So I don't think they are angry at Lane Kiffin as much as now they're just angry at Butch Jones for being terrible in the way they were. And secondly, let's say it was true and you had a guy in a bulletproof vest and somebody in Tennessee fans or in the stands took a shot at him. That'd be really hard to establish a suspect, wouldn't it? With 100,000 people wearing Hunter's orange?
Maybe that's the whole point of him wearing the bulletproof vest.
How are you going to decide? How do you narrow that down? Oh, it was the guy in the orange.
It's got to be the guy walking out with the gun, right? It's crazy to me, too, because I do agree with something you said. I don't think Tennessee fans hate Lane Kiffin or the 50% that do if it wasn't for Derek Dooley and Butch Jones. Right, I mean, that's what really...
No, Lane Kiffin is just, and somebody just said it, he's just another in a long line of really crappy Tennessee coaches lately.
Yeah.
And he's the best of the bunch.
Yeah.
He is by far the best of the bunch.
Yeah, that's what's been... I mean, you got rid of Philip Fulmer for this guy, and then he leaves after 1 year, and you get Derek Dooley in replacement. That's what really, I think people can't stand.
And you get Butch Jones after that.
You're laughing at it, man. I think it's tough.
All right, another Saban prodigy said something interesting this week that I think Tennessee fans will also like. Current head coach Jeremy Pruitt went on Jocks 94.5 and talked about what it was like working for Nick Saban. Let's listen in.
I don't think there's anything that's tough about it. The one thing about Coach Saban is everybody in the building's role is defined. He has a standard that he wants everybody to excel to, and he sets the pace. He's not one of these guys that he's going to ask you to do something that he's not willing to do himself. So I had an opportunity to work for him for 8 years, learned so much about organization, about football in itself, and I could sit here and talk for a week about the things that I learned from him, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity that he gave me.
So a lot of that is fluff, but at the beginning there he says that it wasn't tough at all to work for Nick Saban. Mike, I don't believe that. I don't believe it.
Yeah, and listen, I've explained a couple times that I think it's harder to be an assistant coach for Nick Saban than it is a player. He holds them 3 times more accountable. But I think that Jeremy Pruitt's one of those guys that really likes the attention to detail, likes the fact that Nick Saban's going to outwork you even as an assistant coach. And your role is defined, right? There's no question about what you're supposed to do. Your role is fine down to every little detail, and as long as you walk that line, you're not going to hear from Nick Saban. I think that's what Jeremy Pruitt was trying to encapsulate. Hey, listen, I might get yelled at a ton, but it was not hard to coach under this guy. It wasn't tough because I knew exactly what I had to do.
Well, there's a lot of things going on here. First of all, we live in a day and age where apparently you can't get yelled at by your superior, and if you do, it's tough to work in that environment. It's awful. It's terrible. And Jeremy Pruitt's not buying into that because I assume he's a grown man. Number 2, I bet it is easy. I bet it's easy to coach under Nick Saban. You know why? Because you have the best boss in the country, and he goes out and gets you the best players in the country. It's probably pretty easy to coach a 5-star at every single position on the field. I could coach defense for Nick Saban. I just don't understand why people say, "Oh, it's so hard to work for Nick Saban. It's so awful." I would love to coach the best players in the country.
Yeah, but you're skipping a beat though, because listen, Jeremy Pruitt's got to be one of the guys that brings in those players.
He helps.
Saban. He helps along. He brings it along the way.
Saban's getting those players regardless. Saban is getting.
But
those
it hasn't
players.
always been like that. And
He
Jeremy
got
Pruitt
him
was part of the
before Pruitt.
turnaround.
He'll get him after Pruitt.
He probably will, and he'll continue to do it. My point is that Jeremy Pruitt landed a lot of those 5-star guys. Jeremy Pruitt was an ace recruiter for Nick Saban.
Do you think Jeremy Pruitt lands all those 5-star guys if his head coach over him is, I don't know, Chad Morris instead of Nick Saban?
I think he lands more than you think he will.
I don't think
And I think that's the reason that Tennessee is really going to go in an upward direction, because I think he recruits better than people understand. If Jeremy Pruitt was at a place like LSU, it'd be a top 2 or 3 class every single year, in my opinion.
You're the one who said on your podcast, More Cowbell, he should be the head coach of Mississippi State when Dan Mullen left because of how good of a recruiter that he is.
Throwing haymakers right now.
That was 6 months ago.
You were hoping for Jeremy Pruitt at
I didn't even know who Joe Moorhead was, all right? when Dan Mullen left, I looked around and said, hey, I like Jeremy Pruitt. I think Jeremy Pruitt should be the coach of Mississippi State. And then Joe Moorhead came, and I'm all about Joe Moorhead. And I did feel that way. I do feel like Jeremy Pruitt's going to be a pretty good coach until I saw him in the spring, and he didn't react very well to having poor attendance or whatever, and he started crying to his own fan base, crying about his own fan base, and that took him down a notch, in my opinion. But yeah, he was a good coach for Nick Saban. Did fine. Thank you, Lance Sharp. You've got me all 67. You win this round.
Yes. One win for me. Okay, well, Pruitt is heading into his first season with Tennessee this upcoming year.
Oh, good. More Tennessee.
We cannot wait to end this argument and see what he does. So with that, he's getting pretty much everything he wants and needs from athletic director Phil Fulmer, including a renovation to an already state-of-the-art weight room facility. $660,000, y'all. Let's take a look at this video of the new weight room. This is tweeted by VOLS Football.
Make it look easy, Ken. One more, let's go, baby, let's go. Yeah!
So I know this stuff is used as a recruiting tactic to bring guys in, but is it really necessary?
I think it's definitely necessary. And BA and I talked yesterday about how important ADs are this day and age, like bringing in a top flight AD, and everybody's like, hey, is an AD really bad? That's what you need an AD for. Craig Fitzgerald, who is the strength coach that Tennessee brought in from the Houston Texans, paid him a ton of money. I think he's the highest paid strength coach maybe in the SEC behind the guy down at Texas A&M. This is what you have to have. This is keeping up with the Joneses. If you don't understand that in college football, you're going to be left behind. This is what recruiting is. This is what recruiting is in this new day and age. People going in and seeing the weight room, seeing that Tennessee, that Power T logo behind everything. This is the reason some other schools have fallen behind. If Tennessee wants to climb back up to where they think Jeremy Pruitt can take them, if you really want to expand on Jeremy Pruitt's ability as a head coach, you have to have the top flight facility so that he can recruit in the best of his ability.
You do, but everybody's got it now. Like, how do you get impressed as a recruit? Like, everybody's got it. We saw LSU's, saw Alabama's. Everybody's got it now, so how do you really differentiate? I saw nothing in that video that impressed me at all.
My bad.
That's okay. It's okay.
I picked that video, and I realized as we were watching it that it didn't really showcase.
Oh, now who looks silly?
Oh,
now who looks silly?
You get the point.
My second question to you is this. You say this is what an AD is for. They get them in the weight room. I think Tennessee makes far and away more money than any team in the Southeastern Conference. I think their budget or what they take in is way bigger than anybody else. I want to say like $75 million more than Mississippi State and Ole Miss make down there. They're number one with a bullet. Why are they just now getting this?
Yeah,
more than Alabama. Tennessee brings in.
Well, hey,
Tennessee brings in more than anybody.
That's why John Curry is, asking for a job in Maryland right now, and that's why Philip Fulmer being there as the AD is a big deal. Can Philip Fulmer cash the checks? I mean, can he get people to sign on the dotted line and make sure they're handing the money over? I think that's going to remain to be seen. But we talked about this yesterday in terms of LSU, in terms of would Les Miles ever be a good AD down at LSU? You got to have people that can close and people that can raise the money. If Tennessee's doing that, they're headed in the right direction. If they're not, then you're going to have a lot more questions in the future.
I have one more thing to say, and I know that these weight rooms and these palaces and this shiny stuff is necessary to keep up with everybody else. I just think it's silly that it's necessary. It's really silly that we have to have this arms race, and I have to have a prettier weight room than you, and I have to have a better video about my weight room than you. We were talking at lunch a couple of weeks ago when I said, which was a nicer weight room, the Atlanta Falcons or the Alabama Crimson Tide, and you didn't hesitate. Alabama far and away.
By a mile.
By miles, right? They put way more in than the Atlanta freaking Falcons, an NFL team. That boggles my mind that college teams have to put more into it than NFL teams.
NFL teams aren't recruiting, and that's the nature of the beast. Now listen, we can get down into the nitty-gritty in terms of what college football is and what it should be and what we should be looking at and what players should be focused on. Yeah, they should be focused on school. Yeah, you'd love for guys that kind of step up and say, boy, that School of Engineering over there is really, really good.
Right.
Can't wait to show up on campus and see that. It's just not what it is. 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 16-year-old kids don't understand that yet. They don't know what they want to be for the most part in life. They haven't picked out a career path. What they do know football. They do know where they're going to spend their time on a daily basis, and that's going to be in the weight room. And having that nutrition, having that training table, having that weight room, having that sound system that can blare all the rap songs you want in there while you're lifting your weights and getting you amped up, that's what kids pay attention to when you're 17 years old, and that's why it's a big deal. The Atlanta Falcons, they can write you a check for $5 million and say, hey, listen, you have to work out here. And it's like, hey, I'm good to go with that weight room. I'm just fine with that. Yeah. Alabama, not so much. The rest of the teams from around the country.
And now that Hugh Freeze is in the SEC, nobody's writing checks that big in the SEC. All right, your turn.
Bo Molinari in the comment section says 107.1 million is what Tennessee brought in. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's insane if that's true.
No, I remember
That's insane.
one of the shows we did earlier was the list of who brought in the most money, and Tennessee was number 1.
And the question always is, why aren't they spending? You know, why is it that much?
Why are they so terrible?
Yeah,
Right.
why aren't they spending the money, and why are they upgrading things? But I think they've begun to do that.
We're kind of Tennessee heavy today, but I wanted to give a quick RIP to a legend, John Ward. And this is really sad because the title of this is that Tennessee has lost its voice. This is VOLS broadcasting legend. He died yesterday at the age of 87 years old. He handled play-by-play duties from 1965 to 1999, including hosting the VOLS football and basketball coaches shows. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and his loved ones. And this is a really nice tweet by Vol Network. I won't read this whole thing for you. It's very nice. Lots of tweets have gone out on Twitter, and this is just a really sad day. I feel like last time we were on this show, we had a legend passing as well.
C.M. Newton,
Yep,
the last time we were on the
C.M.
show. Yeah, John Ward, one of the great old school announcers. I feel like, I don't know if he was the last one. You know, you had Larry, you had Munson in Georgia, you had Kaywood Ledford in Kentucky, you had Jack Crystal in Mississippi State, you had John Ward, and there are others. But certainly, you know, as we get into 2018, technology being what it is, every game is on TV. The radio, old-time radio announcers don't have the prestige they have, but just remember, in his day, John Ward was probably the biggest celebrity in the world of Tennessee football, just like Munson was at Georgia and just like Crystal was at State, a true legend.
No, and just to piggyback on that, obviously, you know, I'm a younger guy in terms of what he brought to the table and him being the voice of Tennessee football, but I think all SEC schools have this guy, right?
Right.
I mean, you have somebody in the background of your thoughts and your histories and your memories with the program. Eli Gold at Alabama is that for me. I mean, he literally narrates my memories.
You see the memories in his voice.
He narrates my memories of college football, and so that's where it crosses over, right? That's where it crosses over for each fan base to be able to look at that and say, you know what, this is a tough day.
Don't ever do that again. If I'm going to be on the show, don't you ever do that again.
That's my Eli Gold. Okay, guys, we are going to end the show with a quick College World Series update because 3 SEC teams could win a College World Series championship, and I think that is just outstanding. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what has happened at the College World Series. Mississippi State knocked off Washington 1-0 and North Carolina 12-2. Arkansas defeated Texas 11-5 and Texas Tech 7-4. Florida lost to Texas Tech 3-6, but was able to eliminate Texas 6-1. And here's what's coming up this week, Thursday. Today, game number 10, Florida plays Texas Tech, 8 p.m. If they beat Texas Tech, that will eliminate Texas Tech. Friday, game 11, Mississippi State plays Oregon State. That's at 3 p.m. And Arkansas plays the winner of game 10, maybe could be Florida, at 8 p.m. You just got back from Starkville, Brandon. What was the atmosphere like for Bulldog fans?
Pretty empty. Everybody's in Omaha, but it's very excited. It's very exciting. You know, there's a lot going on. Arkansas and Mississippi State are the 2 teams in control right now. Mississippi State has control of one bracket. Arkansas has control of the other. It's very possible if both teams win one more that you have an All-SEC championship game, which happened last year, right? LSU and Florida. So you might have an All-SEC championship series. I still worry about Florida lurking there. I know they've lost once, but they are the best team. They won it last year. They are experienced. Arkansas in good shape, State in good shape, but don't count out Florida. I will say this. All the SEC there, the SEC is 5-1 in the College World Series.
Wow.
2-0, 2-0, and 1-1. The SEC has dominated baseball this year, dominated regionals, super regionals, and now dominating the College World Series.
I got to admit, man, I'm jealous. I really am so jealous of Mississippi State fans and Arkansas fans and everybody else that's able to make the trip to Omaha. I hope to God that in my lifetime, Bama's able to make that trip, and I'm able to get to Omaha. Are you heading up to Omaha?
Well, if State wins tomorrow or Saturday, I'm going up for the championship series.
Awesome.
It will be the second time State's played for a national title in baseball since 2013. 4th time in all sports they play for a national title. Haven't gotten one yet, but they're close. But Arkansas is going to be tough. Florida's going to be very tough.
Do you have your rally banana ready?
I do not have my rally banana. No, last time, no, I can't do that.
Well, speaking of the College World Series, we will end the show like we do each and every day with our champion of life. And I guess for one fan, he just was not interested in this whole thing at all. I don't exactly know who he was rooting for, but he was asleep. Let's listen in.
Guys, I'm just trying not to wake this guy up.
Yes.
I think he's had a long day.
Interview his buddy, Laura. Interview his buddy.
His buddy says his name
That's
is Tim.
ESPN sideline reporter Laura Rutledge there doing a report right in front of the sleeping fan. And y'all, he is out. I love baseball. How do you fall asleep at a baseball game?
Baseball is a strategic game.
Have you ever watched baseball?
Yes.
I love putting baseball or golf on the TV and absolutely getting one
If
of
you're
these.
going to fall asleep at a sport, he's at the right one.
Yeah,
Plus, it's warm out there. Like, he's out in the sun.
He's had a few beers.
Yeah, he's enjoying himself. And, you know, it's not like that's the only game of the day. He might have been to a couple of games. I'll ask this question to you. You've been a sideline reporter before, and I'm sure you will again someday.
I actually worked the SEC tournament one time.
You did. You worked the SEC tournament. How do you react? What did you think of her reaction there?
I loved it. I loved the report. I thought it was hilarious.
Okay.
I think it was creative. You see a sleeping fan and take the time to go out there and do a little report with all of the rain delays and everything. Hey.
How about you, Mike? You're big. You're like a hibernating bear. Have you ever fallen asleep in public like that?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Listen, especially back in my college days, I'd sleep on the curb, man.
Did you ever fall asleep in class?
Probably about 2 a.m.
At Alabama, did you ever fall asleep in class? Did you ever go to class?
Yeah, it was few and far between.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. It was, no, I've definitely fallen asleep in a class before.
I have too, yeah.
All right, great show, guys. This was a lot of fun. Brandon Walker, tell people where they can watch your show.
More Cowbell, the Mississippi State podcast every day at 11:45 Eastern time here on, is that right? Yeah, 11:45 Eastern time here on SEC Country's Mississippi State Facebook page.
And Mike?
Yeah, Roll Tide Daily, 1 o'clock Eastern time on Monday through Thursday on the SEC Country Alabama page. Have a good time.
Yeah, and one more week of those, but then your show is going to extend.
That's right. I have been fired, and I am going to be out on my own. More Cowbell, Facebook.com/The More Cowbell Show. So everybody on the comment section wanting me out of the building, they'll be escorting me out in about 6 days. So.
Oh, we've all been fired. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching SEC Country Live. We hope it continues past, but I don't know, weigh in on the comment section.
I won today.
I don't know.
I'll let you have this one since it's...
Actually, she might have won.
I think I won this day.
All right, you can have it.
That's Mike Johnson. That's Brandon Walker. I'm Hannah Chalker. Follow us on Twitter, and if you're hiring, hire us. We'll see you next time on SEC Country Live.